Okay.
Are you thinking about it?
I will take it. Oh. Oh, I like it. Have you put them for May in motion? That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I think it also has a, it also has a,
Very good. How are you?
it works like this too. Check this out. Oh, there we go. See?
Hey.
Becomes a interrogation.
That's right.
Say,
Wanting it to be a laser.
Is Rick coming?
Yeah, he's supposed to be here.
We'll wait until everyone sits down and hopefully by then he'll show up. You guys didn't drive together, huh?
how's that Henri Joel doing?
What?
How's the Henri Joel doing?
He had some surgery on his back at the dermatologist, so he's been kind of down for 2 weeks.
Really? Is he okay now?
Oh, yeah. He's a moldy dude, so he has a lot of things. But yeah.
Do you have it done at the VA?
No, that's been a,
Yeah. Another story?
can't even get in there. You know, he tried to get in and I set him up for an appointment like a year and a half in advance. The day before he was supposed to go, they canceled. He said, I'm not dealing with you people anymore. He just goes to the Dr. Stewart. All right, well,
Yeah, it's gotten pretty crowded there.
oh, do you go there?
Yeah, I
Oh.
go there for certain things.
He was never able to really get on the list.
Yeah, they've always done a good job.
All right, well, I'll just go ahead and I guess I'll call our joint meeting to order. It's 11:35 on May 31st. We're here with the county commissioners. I will open our portion of the meeting. Commissioner Hanson, Goldthorpe, Woods, and Baker are here, and Commissioner Arnold is unfortunately out of town. I'll turn it over to you.
I'll call the Ada County Board of County Commissioners meeting We have, myself and Commissioner Tibbs is here. Commissioner Visser's gonna be joining us at some point, but, anyway, back to you.
Okay, so the first item on our agenda is growth in Ada County. We're going to have a presentation by Director Bruce Sloan.
Good afternoon, everybody. Great to have you all here today. Before I start, though, I'd like to share something that I participated in earlier today. Paul Daigle and I, we had the opportunity to go to the Department of Homeland Security and the immigration section Thursday. And this is my first ceremony to greet new citizens to our country. Amazing. Diversity that was out there, and the pride and the joy that all of those citizens had when they not only sang the national anthem, but families were there, children were there. That was amazing. And I gotta tell you, to step away from that, I'm very proud of you. Share with us here. You're going to see that these women and people treating themselves to Russia, China, Cuba, and those sort of things. But it was an amazing demonstration of great patriotism for our country here. So I thought it just set today on a great high, and I thought I'd share that with you before I start. So anyway, commissioners, what I'd like to do is share with you some insights that we've shared with our commission regarding growth and what it might look like. Well, I need
We're
to use.
streaming it, so
Okay.
it'll be much better.
All right, well, is this a little better for everybody right here? I have never been accused of not being able to be heard, so this is almost a first. There we go. Everybody still good? Stacy? All right, next slide, please. What I'd like to do to start with is just share with the Ada County Commissioners some highlights that we are experiencing here in Ada County. Next, for 18. Commissioners, we are achieving and exceeding our commissioners' operational objectives for the Ada County Highway District. I will not go through all of them. However, as you can see, those are pretty tough goals to hit, and the team here at ACHD continues to meet and exceed those. Next slide, please. I'd like to share with you again the ratings that you enjoy here in Ada County regarding the infrastructure and roads. We have outside consultants come in and assess our infrastructure, and once again, Ada County is leading the Northwest and California and lots of parts of the country regarding the condition of your infrastructure. Those are some of the comparisons that this district, or excuse me, these consultants who are out of state came in and brought back to the Ada County Highway District. So the team is doing a great job at their mission. Next slide. I want to share with you again the expenditure report that we give all of the elected officials through Ada County every year, and this one again shows a timeline. It gives you a great idea of the trend that the ACHD commissioners have achieved over time in assuring that dollars that are acquired and I'll call it loaned by the taxpayers are spent well throughout all of Ada County. Next slide, please. And then, as I'm sure you all know, this is our budget. Here's where we're executing. This year is the largest capital infrastructure investment operation in ACHD's history. And again, we remain very proud of our overhead remaining at 8%, regardless of the dollar amounts and the tasks that our 470,000 customers continually give the ACHD commissioners. Next slide. These are the number of projects in the 18 to 23 integrated 5-year work plan. As you well know, we're now working on the next one that will be in front of our commissioners in September, but it's being coordinated through all the cities and Ada County, and it is a back and forth process where we line up the requests and then align those to our budget operations. You will note that, again, as with all other organizations, the requirements exceed the the dollar amount at this point that's allocated toward those. Next slide, please. Chip seal, your favorite topic across the board. We start on June 12th. Those are the numbers. That's what we're going to be doing, and we will finish on time. Next slide. This is another big event, and this is where we'll get into growth that I'd like to share with all of you today. It's in front of the ACHD commissioners. You saw this in the Wall Street Journal, most likely. This was about a month and a half ago, highlighting the tremendous growth that's occurring not only in Boise, but in Ada County. So Ada County is now in the big times. They're in the Wall Street Journal. Next slide. But this is a challenge to the Ada County Highway District. We are truly at a crossroads as to successfully leading and managing our requirements for asset management, maintenance, safety, and the new infrastructure needs to continue to grow. Let me expound a little bit on this for you all. Next. The very smart people, and I mean that very sincerely, at Compass do a great job on looking forward on what the Ada County should be looking like. That line you see was not that old that came out of their projections. We are already above that line in number of people. We're projected to go another 80,000 plus under current assumptions in the next couple of years. This is an amazing growth trend here in Ada County. Next, please. Just to give you a taste of how development activity has occurred in 16 and 17, I'd like to share with you that you can see the increases from 16 to 17 across the board. And that goes back to that amazing growth structure that's occurring in Ada County. However, next slide, please. If you look at 18 compared to 17, in just those months that I've got up there, we are already massively ahead of that record-breaking year we had last year, especially in subdivision permits. We have a 47% increase already, and we're not even into the summer operations yet. Next slide, please. System growth. Right now, we've exceeded 5,000 center lane miles of requirements and infrastructure here at the Ada County Highway District. That is incredible. We used to tell people that the number of mileage, lane miles in Ada County, we could go to Washington, D.C. and back with a couple miles left over. Well, we can go to Washington, D.C. and back and go up to McCall and maybe up to Sandpoint and come back and come around a little bit more and still have a mile or two left over. And that is just the beginning, because we estimate, based on the growth that I'll share with you in a minute, another 370 to 400 miles of miles being added to the ACHD infrastructure within the next couple of years. Next slide, please. Age. If you look at the age of the infrastructure, you can see the red is 1980s, and prior. And we go into the greens. A lot of the development, a lot of the new road miles are being built in that western part of Ada County. So you're looking at Eagle, Star, Meridian, Cuna. Next slide, please. Now, what I'd like to do is go through you by growth and share with you what we know now. You've probably not seen this before. In front of you is a chart that shows this, because I'm not coming back to this slide, so it'll orient you as I go through the different maintenance zones. Next slide, please, Stacy. Zone number 1, old growth. We're looking right now, we've got 236 plats, some lots. Maximum growth on those lots are 108 buildings per se. Average is 6.4, but we're looking at only projecting an additional 14 lane miles in this area. It's a lot of infill and such, but it is growing. Next slide. Zone 2. As you can see, a lot more lots being planned, larger subdivisions, a lot more new development going into this. But look at the projected lane miles that we have shared with our commissioners going now between the next 5 and 7 years. Next slide, please. Zone 3, lane miles 110. That's huge. Number of lots over 11,000 that are planned at this point in time. And I say in this point in time, with the average build out per those plats at 183 dwellings and such, that is huge. Next slide. So since we're in the North Kuna and South Meridian area, let me break before we go to the other ones and just share with you some information that we see currently. And if you look at this, this is what is already on the books, recent developments. I won't go specifically through them, but as you can see, that's a lot that will be facing all of you as elected officials as we talk about strategies moving forward. Next slide, please. These are the current entitlements that we know it. I can give this to you if you're so inclined to take this back with you. But the blue, those are preliminary subdivisions. There's a lot of blue up there in this area. Next slide, please. Impacts, we're projecting 40,000 vehicle trips per day. Now, if and when additional development comes, and there they are up there, we're projecting to add another 9,000 vehicle trips per day. So you can start to assume and start to understand that this is a hell of a challenge for all of us as partners and the cities involved with this going forward. Next slide, please. We have program projects, but we have 9 intersections, 5 road segments that are over capacity at this point, are not programmed currently in the integrated 5-year work plan going forward. We are working the new one, and again, you're seeing that, your staffs are seeing that as we move forward. But that's a lot of construction, but it doesn't fully answer the challenges that are coming to the Ada County Highway District and Ada County, and of course the cities across the board. Next slide. Zone 4. Again, 20 miles, not as aggressive as Zone 3, but look at the lots, the number, and the maximum per. That's a growth area again. Next slide, please. Maintenance Zone 5, again, older part and such, but 107, some developments with over 1,700 dwellings that are planned and plotted and preliminary plotted to come forward. Next slide, please. Zone 6, here's the big one. If you look at that, 132 projected new miles in the Ada County system. This is again Northern Meridian, Eagle, and Star. And as you can see, the some of the developments are huge. The lots that we know of right now is huge, 13,000. Next slide, please. So if you put all these things together, commissioners, this is what is in front of Ada County in the next 5 to 7 years. Over 38,000 new lots in the hopper already, and an addition of 370 to 400 new miles of infrastructure that we will be working toward to fulfill based on developments going forward. Next slide. What does this mean to our congestion? This is about a year out of date and such, but as you can see, the trend is there. Almost double the number of vehicle miles traveled coming up within the next couple years. Next slide. Budget. We've briefed you all in the past on this, but right now, ADA deficiencies and sidewalk deficiencies that are required that we're looking at. Over about $300 million of requirements there that are currently unfunded. Pedestrian facilities, $185 million that are currently unfunded in the CIP. And if you go, and if you go to the CIP, we're approaching about $380 million of unfunded capital improvement projects that all cities and Ada County have suggested were important to fulfill. So there is a challenge going forward. That being said, next slide. I've always believed with a dedicated team, anything's possible. And so that is a quick review of growth and challenges that are facing Ada County, and the team that we've put together under the Commission's leadership to do our best to solve it. So I hope that gives you an insight of what we've shared with our commissioners. And I'll just say over to you all at this point in time. Thank you, Commissioner Baker.
Comments, questions, issues? Commissioner Tibbs?
Madam Chair, that's a lot of growth,
Yeah.
a lot of growth. You're kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to come and talk to you is we're faced with some real challenges as far as you are, with trying to balance the application process for new development and the current roadway system that we have, and especially in the southwest area of Ada County, we're really struggling. Do you have any suggestions that will help us out a little bit? Because it's going to be congested. I mean, it's congested now. And I know from my own personal life is that if I get up to go to work and it's congested when I go, then I'll probably get up earlier and go when it's not congested. That's not always possible for a lot of people. But is there any relief in sight in the southwest Ada County area for widening some roadways? Anything in that? And I haven't recently looked at the 5-year plan to see what's going to be coming up in that area. Maybe somebody can help me understand that a little more.
Well, we do have a plan, but we also have a lot of needs. Is there a slide that shows the intersections that are going to be worked on soon?
We can
I
get
mean,
that. I
there's
don't have that in the presentation.
Intersections, we're going to be doing some intersections, but in terms of widening the roads out, it's problematic.
Yes. We do have, we are looking very closely at doing widening intersections, widening roads. We have a 10-mile project. We have a coal project. But again, these are truncated out based on how it fits into the 180 or the 361 projects that we've got going right now. But yeah, the staff is in coordination with city staffs, and of course yours, are looking very closely at this.
You have to understand that, ACHD doesn't do land use. And so we only can react to what the cities and the county do. And as you can see, you guys have done a lot. And we're talking, probably hundreds of millions of dollars necessary to do these projects. And then even if we won the lottery, say when it got up to $500 million, we wouldn't have to pay taxes on it, it would still be difficult to get the work done in a timely manner just because of the fact that the contractors, there's so much work, you can't find people to do the jobs, that sort of thing. So, I mean, it's a process and we're working on it.
If I could
Sure.
follow a question that maybe it's a little more specific. For some roads in southwest Ada County, how difficult is it to be able to request? I guess you can request anything, but maybe it's something that isn't. It's an issue that may not be on the 5-year plan to say to try to mitigate the traffic congestion, such as maybe the speed limit's too high. Maybe it's a public safety issue. How difficult is it to get speed bumps or no parking on the shoulder? Those don't, to me, they don't seem to be a huge project, but I mean, to the Ada County Highway District, they might be. But I mean, are you open to some suggestions, trying to work together to try to work through some of those issues on some specific streets?
Sure, absolutely. You have to understand that on arterials, like, the farm to market roads, the mile section roads and collectors that are in between, they're not going to have speed bumps on them. Those are just for local roads. And there's a process to go through to get those instituted. Speed limits, I think our engineering staff looks at those quite frequently. I mean, but if there's a specific one you have in mind, or if it's a couple of specific ones you have in mind, then obviously just pass them on.
Right.
And in terms of the bigger projects, you know, you can always put those in your 5-year work plan submission. And we'll try to deal with those as best we can.
I have a question.
Sure.
With the city of Boise, if we go back to the one slide that showed kind of the disbursement of revenue versus expenses. And I always refer to this area as the southwest Boise area, and that's kind of the Lake Hazel. That's an area where it's their area of impact, but they haven't annexed yet. So when it comes to dispersing funds, it's allocated from ACHD to the city of Boise, how much of that area is Boise paying attention? Are they paying attention? I mean, is there any way to break that down as far as numbers go, and how much money they're spending out there to address some of these roadway issues? Or because they haven't annexed it, they're just not doing anything?
Ken?
It kind of came to a head 2 years ago with the Syringa development. And you had folks visiting with you a little bit on that, and we had it a lot, and we visited with Boise a lot. And due to the ability we had to move some money from underbid projects and Boise requesting or requiring the developer to finish Orchard, the extension, all of the problems that were identified as being solved became funded that year. And it was nothing short of a miracle that those projects are working out as we speak. A little to the west of that, we have not quite as much of a problem, but plenty, and there's a couple of projects going on, Lake Hazel and Victory, some of the intersections at first. But there's a lot that are identified but not funded.
So I think that's, that's kind of the issue in a nutshell, is that, as Commissioner Baker said, the voters created the Ada County Highway District in 1971. It wasn't to be another land use agency. We were supposed to provide the road. So county has a comprehensive plan, 6 cities have a comprehensive plan. Those are a 20-year look. Those are great. Challenge is that, okay, now people propose subdivisions consistent with those comp plans, and they're here, there, and everywhere, and we have sort of a 20-year plan. So when you distill it all down, it's the 5-year work plan, it's the 20-year comp plan that we've got to fund. That's our ability to execute on what we're supposed to do. And so the question is, do we have discipline to say, here's a subdivision that's consistent with somebody's comp plan, but we're planning to build the roads over here first. This is gonna have to wait, or it's just gonna exacerbate, the problem. Now, we'll not approve it if there's a safety issue, for sure, but congestion and safety are 2 different things. And so how do we collectively have the discipline to say, well, let's wait until we get the roads, over there. I mean, we charge impact fees to the maximum extent we can. But an impact fee pays for the widening of the road. And so, as Commissioner Case, the 2 lanes that are there, those are the responsibility of the existing tax base. So when you go in and fix the road, you gotta have the money to pay for the 2 lanes in the middle, and then the impact fee pays for the 2 lanes outside. And that's what constrains us, quite honestly. If we don't keep up with that, then we get in a pickle. But I think that the issue of the Southwest is a case in point. Having subdivisions approved that are consistent with the comp plan, but roadway improvements that were supposed to support that density that lagged 20 years behind is a problem. And that's where I think, we've got to find a way to be disciplined and understand that the discretionary action of annexation, or not annexation of the county, but just rezoning, that's discretionary. guys have a lot of leverage to say yes or no, you know. And what we need to do is provide accurate estimates of how long construction's gonna take to be approved there. Hopefully, that's what we're doing in our reports. Just because it meets the highway district's policies for what's inside the box and there's no safety issue doesn't mean that it's the right decision to approve it at the right time. If the infrastructure's complete.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question about the impact is that, you know, we're seeing more around, especially in southwest Ada County, more applications for high-density projects, and so there's an impact fee that goes on with ACHD. Is it required that impact fee be used for the roads in that area?
No, and the reason why is because if you do that and you break it up into areas, there's some areas where you could put a new facility in or building in, and the road network is completely built out, so you wouldn't spend it there. So years ago, and I don't know how long it's been, maybe Gary can help me with this, but years ago, the decision was made just to, it's county is the area, and the money is spent where the needs are.
So we just did our CIP year and a half, 2 years ago. And so I came to that process arguing for, let's go back to zones. And as I went through the process, I realized that really didn't make sense anymore. Because you take a Zions Bank and say, well, what's the zone for that? I mean, you can draw trips from around the county for that.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, for better or for worse, I mean, our capital improvement plan lays out what we're building over the next 20 years. It's a pretty big grid system and,
Yes?
No, follow-up question, please, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Everybody's just gonna have to, you're gonna have to get your hands up fast. We have heard in public hearings that ACHD, the commission has approved variances to the level of service. Level of service F, and an applicant comes in, the roadway system is already at a level of service F, which is not good. That's my understanding, that's the worst. And that the commission has waived that to allow the application to go through. Is that accurate?
In some situations, but I think there's a lot of misinformation about the LOS. It's a level of comfort. In other words, I can go through the light quickly. I only have to sit there and wait for 2 seconds before the light changes. Versus safety. And LOS and safety are really two different things. And I use this as an example during the one hearing we had that this all kind of came to a head, and that is, you know, if you're sitting there going 0 miles an hour, you're not going to get in an accident. You're safe. It's the comfort of the LOS. And we're adding 100,000 people a year to this county, at least. We have for the past 2 or 3 decades. And we're just gonna have to, it's unfortunate, but it isn't gonna be, you're not gonna be able to get across town in 10 minutes anymore.
But I think, if I could add to that, I mean, we, the 5 Ada County Highway District Commissioners, really got into the weeds on that issue about whether or not the highway district, in fact, has the legal authority to turn down a subdivision application based on level of service. I mean, we really, looked into that, and, that would essentially put the highway district in the de facto position of controlling all, development, in Ada County, which if that's what we want to do, then we need to take action to have the land use agencies create an ordinance that then, delegates that authority to the highway district. If that's where we want to go, that's back to the blueprint for good growth days of 2007, 2008. But just because the highway district says it meets our policy and it's safe, we can opine that it's accessing a road that's at level of service F and is not scheduled or programmed for improvement for 15 or 20 years, and then the land use agency can rely on that to make the final decision. That's my personal opinion. I'm not giving legal advice, but that's sense.
Good, because you're just an engineer.
But I love dispensing
I know.
legal advices.
Just a second, and
You just buy one on TV.
but the other portion of the LOS is also, it's necessary in order to be able to assess the impact fees. So if we sit there and say, well, we can't abandon LOS, because it does develop the impact fees, and without it, we couldn't collect impact fees, which means you wouldn't have the money to build the roads to create a better LOS. So it's kind of a catch-22 there, but again, it's not a safety recommendation, it's a level of comfort. Kent?
And having to do with LOS, as some of you already know, I've been on the speaking circuit with regards to this very issue now for a few months, since the Savannah subdivision came up for discussion. And the two Supreme Court cases that in the state of Idaho completely relieve us of the ability to make decisions solely based on LOS is something that I have found visiting with city council people, a city attorney, and of course all kinds of people out in the public and the neighborhood associations. None that I spoke with were even vaguely aware of that constraint, which is appalling to me because they've been around for what, Steve, since what, 2009? Yes, okay. So I just taken it upon myself, because the more people know about the abilities, the constraints, the better everybody is going to be able to deal with everything we're talking about today. And without that understanding, you get a whole bunch of well-meaning people showing up to our hearings, meaning everybody's in this county, with a bunch of pitchforks and torches, and they don't, had they known what they could do with the particular issues, they wouldn't. They just wouldn't. People are way too respectful to do that, other than unknowingly. And so, again, I've taken it upon myself. The last rather extensive meeting I had for 2.5 hours was just last night, and it'll continue. I wish we could have a couple of small seminars for any and everybody involved from any land use planning level and up with our general counsel, so that they would know absolutely specifics, T's crossed, I's dotted, why, what, who, when, and where. I'd love to see that happen. Thanks.
President Vick.
Yes, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, ma'am. A series of questions. Follow up to what Commissioner Woods said, that the Ada County Highway District does not have the authority to reject a development. The flip side of that is then there's no statutory authority to approve a development. Is that correct?
Let me clear the record there upon cross-examination. I didn't mean to say that we don't have the ability to reject it. We do. I mean, if we make a finding that the development doesn't report to our policy, or it creates a safety issue, obviously we're not going to approve it. What I'm saying is that if we were to say, this is just me, my fellow commissioners can chime in, if we were to say, we're not going to approve the development because of its impact on congestion, I think that gets to be problematic for the commission.
I would agree with that, yeah.
So just to clarify that then, a submission is made to ACHD, you take a look at it, and based on what would you approve or reject that submission?
Can you restate that?
Yeah.
So you said something along, you have standards, I guess associated with level of safety. So if you were to take a look at a project, what are the checklists, or what is the checklist you use to decide to approve or reject as a submitted development?
Well, there's a number of things. Internal to the boundaries of the application, the applicant is generally proposing new roads or expansion of existing roads. So, sidewalk infrastructure, curb and gutter, width of the streets, if there's stop controls, if they're building a collector versus a local road, there's all kind of rules associated with that. And then that's obviously gonna connect into another public road, and so if that, public road, like, I don't know, if it's within a mile of the school, there's gotta be a safe way to get there. If it's a mitigating a left turn lane or right turn lane, kind of depends on the specifics of that.
When I look at the Idaho Code, specifically Title 67 in the Local Land Use Planning Act, it appears that a governing board is the sole board, government entity that can approve or reject a development.
Well-
And a governing board is defined as Board of Commissioners or a mayor, but I don't see the highway district fitting in that definition.
Correct me if I'm,
We're not under Title 67.
correct me if I'm wrong, but we go under Title 40. right?
We're not
Yeah.
under 67.
We're not
But
under 60.
if I can, and this is what happens when Commissioner Wood stays at the Holiday Inn Express. But,
Apply to the bar after this meeting. so.
but we've had several cases where we have been sued, interpreting whether we're part of the Local Land Use Planning Act. And it's clear through the case law and the statute, as you point out, that only cities and counties are governing boards in terms of land use development. The other part is how we do participate within LUPA is in the development of the comprehensive plan. Within the Ada County, the transportation component, we do have a lot of control and input in how that component looks within each jurisdiction. But I think, other than the KMSD decision, and I know I had sent that to you, there's another provision that I would like to just kind of, and it explains, Commissioner Visser, the relationship between the county and the highway district in terms of development, and not just the highway district. But Commissioner Woods is correct, and that is that in Title 40, in the plat signing authority, our authority is really over the design configurations, travel demand, those type of things in terms of what the roadway, the specific design connections. So let's assume that a development comes and they propose a development that does not meet our particular design standards. That happens. And we don't sign the plat. Will that development die? No. The thing is the county could still go ahead and approve it. But under, maybe I'll get my cell phone, under 676513, which talks about subdivision ordinance, it says each such ordinance may provide for mitigation of the effects of subdivision development on the ability of political subdivisions. Now, political subdivisions as defined includes highway districts of the state, including school districts, to deliver services without compromising quality of service delivery to the current residents or imposing substantial additional costs upon the current residents to accommodate the proposed subdivision. So it is through this that the governing board, through their ordinances, they can set the standards for the development and make sure. Now, one thing that in a lot of our applications, we're an advisory role. The only one that, so we make recommendations to the county and you follow that and you approve the development. Even with the plat, while we have the plat signing authority as to the design configurations, the county still has the ultimate authority, as you know, to approve or deny the development. So hopefully that clarifies that point.
Thank you, Steve. My understanding is that, in trying to get an illustration, is to equate it with an advisory board, where you have a board or other entity like that doing research on their expertise, and then the other entities look forward to getting a recommendation based on their expertise and taking a look at it. Would you say that's correct, Steve? I have some more questions.
Sure.
During Director Wong's presentation, there were a few terms that I didn't grasp. When you had the graphs for the maintenance zones, for instance, what
average means average.
Well, I know average means average. What are the variables that go in there to give you an average?
It'd be the average number of preliminary plats by the average number of proposed homes or commercial developments in there. So we give an average. You have what the maximum was, which was the big, but over time, the average amount of infrastructure that went into those developments, that's the number it's referring to.
And then linked with that maximum then is the number for that specific time period then, or is?
Yes, for one plat. Does that help, sir?
I guess it does. I never knew average meant something. I had that down. Vehicle trips, what's a good definition for that? Every time you get into a vehicle?
Yes.
And is that, how accurate are the estimates or the figures that you come up with that?
Well, I've always been a believer that all models are good, some are useful. And so you get the best insight from some very smart people based on agreed upon modeling criteria, and it spits that out. It is quite accurate, depending upon the amount of investigation that goes into that. We do use that a lot, as do all the other planning agencies in all the cities.
Weight those figures at all based on a higher or lower population area?
You're getting out of my expertise right now.
So just, I know there's a template
Yeah.
or how, like, each house will give you X number of
cars
trips.
generally.
Right, so that's what's used. I mean, the only way of refining that is to go to every house and have them write down every day where they go. But
That's a little
it's,
extreme.
exactly, so it's basically just based on, observations by a lot of different jurisdictions over time, and it's a criteria that, is used, and it's used in every situation so that it's standardized.
And then do your traffic light devices, do they include the ability to do counting?
No.
Or filming, don't film.
Just my grasp of lane miles, say you have 1 mile of roadways, and there's presently 2 lanes, so that would be 2 lane miles, and then if it changes to 4 lanes before, but the one that might throw me is if you have a turning lane, does that qualify as a lane with that, so you'd have?
Where's lane here? Yes.
Okay. That makes sense. My last question for now is, do you have an estimated cost differential from changing 1 mile of 2-lane roadway to 3 lanes versus changing it to 5 lanes?
That's by project, sir. It depends on the amount of real estate we have to purchase. It depends on the construction of the road that's already there. It depends on if we're going to add sidewalks and the construction of that sidewalk. So it is, if I was to give you
Variable dependent.
You bet. If I was to give you a figure, it would be wrong the next day.
I'm just saying, like, if you estimate something, I guess then you'd have to go out and take a look at that mile. And
Oh,
say,
absolutely.
okay, we have to use eminent domain to acquire so much more private property. Go 5 lanes.
And our staffs, in conjunction with all other staffs, they work very diligently at assuring that all those numbers and figures and what's going to be in front of the commission is very accurate.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Steve.
I don't get a thank you for answering your questions.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, I mean, I think, the challenge is that you have a 20-year comprehensive plan. We have a 20-year capital improvement plan. So when we have a subdivision application where we say that it's gonna connect to an arterial that's not gonna be widened for 15 years, I mean, the impact fees are gonna mitigate it within that 20-year time horizon, right? So, if we want to get a better handle or greater control on this, we need to have, in my humble estimation, a shorter planning horizon and be somewhat disciplined in how we're going to, approve these things, which would be a more focused effort on where the where the projects are gonna go. I mean, right now, that, we take our 20-year plan, and that opportunity for you to really have input is the integrated five-year work plan. You know, that's the big thumb wrestling about where money goes and when.
Well, if I could comment on that. And that goes back to my original question regarding the city of Boise. When we've got, the area identified out there of south, and again, I'm gonna refer to it as Southwest Boise because that's their area of impact, and that's what they, over the last 30 years, they've supposed to have annexed by now, because really all the conditions that get placed upon development out there are dictated going through the city of Boise because it's their identified area of impact.
So you're talking about, say,
Well, I'm talking
Cloverdale to-
Victory Road to Cloverdale down to Lake Hazel over to Coleman.
okay, so that area.
So for 30-some years, that has been identified as Boise City's area of impact. So when it comes to development in that area, even though it hasn't been annexed, the county gets restricted by Boise City's requirements of what they have to do in there for land use. But yet now, recently, probably within the last couple of years, Boise City has approached the county with the idea of pulling back that area of impact. And my question would be, if Boise City over this time period hasn't been spending money out there in Southwest through their 5-year plan, when you guys send out your requests every year on what you'd like to see. Boise City's doing nothing out there, but yet it's still hasn't been annexed. It's still an unincorporated Ada County. My thought is some of that money, that whatever that dollar figure is that showed Boise City the money they're getting, should be used out in that area to help with this. And again, that's a decision that is bore by your agency. I get it. I mean, if Boise City isn't requesting it, and you don't have, or it hasn't come before you, how do we develop that? How do we get these roads developed? Because I can recall back in 2010 when I was sitting on ACHD, that the topics of making these roads wider and less congested was going on back then, and I know it was going on before my arrival. So maybe that's just a commentary. Let me get to the point that I want to make, and my attorney's probably going to wring my neck for bringing this up. Look, Maple Grove Road, south of Lake Hazel Road. You've had Charter Point subdivision out there, I don't know how many years, it's 10 or 15 years that it's been developed. But that road, there's nothing that's happened with it. And as you drive down through there, you've got cars that are parked everywhere. And it's just a mess. The question I have, is there anything that can be done to improve that area on a couple of different fronts? Number one, I think it was kind of brought up earlier, Jim might have brought it up about reducing speed limits because of the congestion there. There's a lot of kids that are out playing. We have discovered that there's no sidewalks down there, and the fact that the school district won't even send a bus down there to pick up kids because they've got no way to turn the bus around. So I know that as part of your organization, you have this Safe Routes to School programs, and wondering if some of that money can't be used to address the sidewalks and all that. The other question that I would throw out is with the parking, and I had learned kind of not from a real reliable source, and that's why I want to get it straight from the horse's mouth here, is some of the parking going on both sides of that street, going south on Maple Grove has been somewhat authorized by ACHD for folks to park over there, or you've made some accommodations, I don't know. I just needed to, because that comes to enforcement. If ACHD hasn't authorized that, is there a way that we can get our sheriff's department out there to enforce the parking area? And then the bigger question is then where do people park? So,
Well, I guess
My questions.
that question on the parking is, I don't know. I didn't even know that was occurring, so I guess we'd have to check into that.
Yep.
And then we can get back to you, and if it is something that we allowed, then we should deal with that, and if we didn't, then we could let you know, and the sheriff could enforce that. Regarding the issue, though, of the money that chart that showed the money for Boise, that is a chart that shows what money was raised within the city limits of Boise and what was spent within the city limits of Boise over that period of time. We do the same thing with all the other cities in the county. So literally, that area that is not annexed into the city, that would be under the county expenditures. So that would be, all the way over on the left there.
I think that if you can pull that map back up, I mean, to me, that's a microcosm of an issue we have all over the place. To me, it looked like on the east side of Maple Grove, it's been developed, on the west side, it hasn't. And so, if I'm looking at the map right, and, is that what's going on out there? And for us to go in and, usually we have people dedicate the right-of-way during the subdivision process, so we don't have to go in and buy it, but, I mean, it's either a strength or a weakness. It's a strength in that it's a cost savings, a weakness in that we're somewhat having to sit on the sidelines until the development application comes in. So is that, if I'm looking at Maple Grove, it looks like on the west side there, it's just not subdivided yet, and so it's left unimproved, and it's goofy.
No, it's the east side.
Yeah, east side is unimproved. West side is the chart.
So I got dyslexia here, but anyway, I mean, the point still, you know what I mean? I mean, that's, and, we have that in spades between CUNA and Meridian, where CUNA is running sewer line and proposing development down 10 Mile, and CUNA is running up, Black Cat, and, it's like the old railroad that doesn't connect, I mean, trying to get that, I mean, it's consistent with both comp plans, but it's really awkward in the next, 10 years, because it's not how we're planning to do things. Yet these subdivision applications are coming in.
So are these pictures showing South Maple Grove kind of where it dead ends? Because Maple Grove dead ends.
Yeah.
These cars are backed up at Lake Hazel.
Right, but I mean the parking.
Lake Hazel.
The parking. How far, where is the parking on the sides of Maple Grove occurring?
Between, south of Lake Hazel Road.
So basically where it
All the way to the
There's
end.
some park around here or something? Why would-
You got apartment complexes there, and that's an
So those developments that were approved didn't have the proper amount of parking?
That was back, the original one was back 14 years ago.
Well, like I said, I don't know what the rules, policies are regarding parking on the sides of Maple Grove, that area. We'll look into that.
We need to know whether it's your jurisdiction or ours. so
Right.
We can get our sheriff up there.
Right.
The other issue, I guess the other question, and to me, this was a big concern, was the inability of the West Ada School District to get bus transportation back there. Kids have to walk along that roadway, which is really congested anyway, without any sidewalks or any of that. If there's anything that can be done.
So that's West Ada on Maple Grove? That's the West Ada School District?
Have we
Boise
ever
goes
been made
pretty
aware of that?
Well, have you ever heard about this issue? I learned about it. a while ago. This is why I say my attorney's gonna kill me, because we tabled an application before us because we wanted to have this conversation with you. And that was one of the topics that came up.
And this is all Maple Grove, south of Lake Hazel, is what you're talking about.
This particular, or the issues over.
Okay. Well, I think the first thing that needs to be determined is whether parking is allowed, you know, or if this just happened over time. So, if that's the case, then it's just, if it's not allowed, I think there's some quick things that can be done.
Commissioner Baker, if I could, Commissioner Case, again, you brought up the Safe Routes to School. One of the partners in the Integrated Five-Year Work Plan, of course, are the school districts. They are intimately involved. They are given the same opportunities to comment and to champion or not champion different projects. I would suggest, as a consideration for the elected officials, that this is a subject that you might want to start hard at within the school districts, because again, their inputs are put into that mix of the integrated five-year work plan, and we work very closely with the different school districts and neighborhood associations when we start bringing this to and from to our elected officials. At the same time, the integrated five-year work plan is a give and take amongst your staff and all the staffs of the city. So you all have an opportunity as we continue to mature this to the September date where we bring it in front of our commissioners for their thumbs up or thumbs down, to have a lot of input into this. It's not a set process, or excuse me, it's not a here's your one shot at it, as well. But I would ask, sir, that you have that discussions also with the school districts, and if they're not willing to prioritize that, then that's something that you all might want to have that discussion with their leadership.
And not only that, I mean, it's like when things are brought to our attention, it doesn't have to go through the school district, it doesn't have to go through the county, it doesn't have to go through the city. I mean, if we see an issue that's important, we can elevate it. It's just that the five-year work plan and the give and take between the different organizations is, you know, people are theoretically more cognizant of what goes on in their area than maybe we are. But on the other hand, we might be more cognizant too. So this is something that you guys could put in your five-year work plan. You don't have to wait for the school district to do it.
If I could just tag on a little bit, Commissioner Case, the local land use planning act treats schools a little bit differently. And there's a specific provision that requires that whenever you get a development for a new school, that there is, and a lot of land use agencies have missed it in the past, but it requires that the land use jurisdiction work with either the local or the state highway transportation departments in making sure that there's adequate facilities to and from the school before, as part of their approval for it. And so that whole statute and reason why it was enacted was because of one of the problems you're identifying, and that is that many of these subdivisions would go in, the schools would go in, and then there was inadequate facilities to support that. And so just a heads up to Megan, whenever you get these subdivisions and schools, and is to make sure that the studies are actually done, that they're coordinated with us. We sit down with the applicant, we get traffic studies, we get pedestrian facility assessments, and we make sure that whatever development goes forward, that those facilities are in place to support the school.
Just as an example, so Maple Grove, that's in our capital improvement plan for arterial expansion. It's not in the integrated five-year work plan. So to me, that's an example of, that issue will come before you. It's in theory, something that'll be occurring in the next 20 years, but it's not at all gonna happen in the next 5 years. I guess that weighs on your decision.
You'll all be 92 years old.
All right.
I don't know if you're leaving here.
You know, that's,
Somebody changed my diaper.
Hopefully you'll be going the speed limit.
A lot of these things that we've been talking about that are contemplated but not programmed nor funded is the reason that we did this latest poll and the survey that just ended on the 25th. And I would hope that everyone in this room took the opportunity to take that survey at the very least. And when the time comes, if the time comes, I believe it's when, this year, when some decisions have to be made at the polls as to how or what the level of additional funding for some of this will be, that we all get behind each other, because it'll be to all our best interest.
Well, that was a little cryptic, so let me flesh that out.
Okay, thanks.
We did run a survey to look at what the likelihood of an increase in the registration fee would be, which could bring us anywhere between $5 and $10 million extra into ACHD. I guess we'll get more of the results this coming Wednesday, well, next Wednesday, and an idea of what the public would like to see done with the money. And preliminarily, it looks like it's congestion management. So it's likely, we're talking about it, we haven't made any final decisions yet, but it's looking more likely that we will probably put on this November's agenda or ballot a vote for the registration fee increase, which I think also has the benefit of, it's kind of a user fee. If you don't have a car, your registration fee isn't going to go up. If you don't have a car, you're not going to have a registration fee. But we're looking on that. But as Kent said, if we do this, we would hope that we would have your all's support. Help.
I'll be going fishing.
I know you will,
But I think it's important to add to that if we want growth to pay for itself, then we need to keep up with our 20-year capital improvement plan. And what that requires is that growth pays for the outside lanes, the existing tax base pays for the inside lanes. If we can't demonstrate that we're doing that, then these roads become an existing deficiency, we can't collect impact fees for them, and that the taxpayer has to pick up the whole burden of that. So making sure we have enough revenue to, rehabilitate the existing roads when we go to add the two outside lanes is critically important. Otherwise, we're not making sure growth pays for itself.
Thank you. We're all kind of in the same boat on this, is that the growth is occurring so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're all being slammed at 80,000 people have moved into Ada County in the last 5.5 years. The county's kind of cruised along, and before it was 100,000 people in 10 years, and now we're just steadily speeding up. We're going to get to that million figure long before it was projected. We have to find the money for each one of our entities to do what we're all supposed to do. We've just developed our master facilities plan, and Ada County 2025, and we have a lot of needs and very little money. And if we end up approving the master facilities plan, that we're going to be looking at how do we fund this, and how are the taxpayers going to take it? The county continues to grow and grow and grow. Ada County, we're faced with having to make decisions on land use. And for me, I try to look at the big picture, the whole picture. And if I wasn't aware that ACHD had ever given provided a variance to an applicant for a level of service app. And I wasn't aware of that at all. I guess I was a little surprised at it. But I look at, I want to know what ACHD is thinking about a particular land use application. I want to know what the school district is thinking. Now, any one of those individually may not be enough to deny a project, but if you start checking the boxes and, it doesn't look favorable for that area, I mean, it's going to make a tough decision for the commission. And we don't get into the weeds generally. We look at the applicant applicant comes in, obeys the law, does everything that an applicant is supposed to do. There isn't any opposition to the project. You know, it's advertised, and we've had situations where we've had to redo public hearings because it wasn't recorded. You know, the first time that it was heard, there was no opposition. The second time that it was heard, there was a room full of opposition. And it was all traffic congestion. That was the number one opposition. But it's really tough for us to be able to make an informed decision if we don't have all the information that we need.
And I sympathize with you, but.
You feel our pain.
I feel your pain. You should feel our pain. One of the issues with level of service that it just, you know, we look at it like the Savannah subdivision, very tiny subdivision, very tiny. What was that, 1925 homes? That's it? It wasn't much more than 38? Okay. Across the street from Muir Woods, which was hundreds of homes that had already been built. But the thing is, you can say, we would not approve the Savannah subdivision. That doesn't mean no traffic's gonna go down that road. These roads get people from Canyon County to come on, you know? I mean, there's no way we can shut roads down. We can't do like the freeway does when, you know, like when you're in Wyoming or Oregon where they have those things, and if you've got a snowstorm, they shut the traffic down. We can't do that. If we did, it would be insane. I mean, we'd have to say, okay, one car you can go in, you can't go in, wait, this one can go in. So that's part of our issue, is that even though a small 38 subdivision might add, you know, 19 cars to the road at the peak hour, that may tip it over the level of service, but those 19 cars may come from Black Ant Road.
Speaking of insanity, Steve Price has walked up to me.
Thank you, Commissioner Tibbs. It's always great to be before you. There's a lot of confusion about the level of service and what it means, and Commissioner Baker's explained it. It really is a planning threshold. It is not a roadway capacity threshold. The variance that was given, typically, if we hit a planning threshold like level of service F, we exact improvements, okay? So right turn lane, sidewalks, maybe intersection improvements, light improvements. But because Savannah was so small, they were able to demonstrate an undue hardship with having to make any expensive improvements with the little impact that they were causing. So really the variance relates to the district exacting improvements. In the end, they came back and made some improvements to go ahead with the development. But we have a series of when somebody hits that planning threshold, what does it mean in terms of us trying to mitigate the impacts of that development on the existing infrastructure?
Thank you. I went out a couple of weeks ago and kind of drove around the area a little bit. I saw the park.
And you added a car to
I
the
added
road.
to the
You
congestion.
increased the congestion.
That's right.
And by the way, that's only 1 hour of the day, really, when that threshold hits that level, so.
But what I saw was, and this was at 10:30, and so there was virtually very little traffic in that area. A lot of cars parked along the side of the road on some cross streets, primarily around apartment complexes. But you know, the traffic on Maple Grove and Lake Hazel, you know, it wasn't bad. But that's not rush hour. I'm sure the big problem is in the morning and afternoon hour.
And again, you don't build roads for 2 hours a day.
Just one last thing on that, for me anyway. I believe that beginning with that particular project and what eventually was passed by the commission, and there's been several other projects that are either in the works or coming before us where some of these improvements to mitigate the level of service may not, as it was in the Savannah deal, was not even proposed. They are being proposed now, coming in front of any possible denial. And I've been watching that like a hawk. And it's somewhat gratifying.
Okay.
Just have something
get those impact fees, so, and you see it's just 2 lanes, and you know there's gonna be a negative impact, can you raise the priority of changing those 2 lanes to 3 lanes, at least having a turn in there, lessening the traffic?
Well,
So, if I could, I mean, the impact fee is supposed to mitigate the impact of the development. So we have a countywide capital improvement plan that the impact fee is mitigating for the impacts of that development. I think what Steve is saying is if you have a particular development that's coming in and its level of service up, then that gives us the ability to say, okay, you need to do even more than pay an impact fee. You need to mitigate for these situations. And that's what
You
we
cannot delay the start of the development. Is that correct?
I don't believe that, I mean, what we do as a recommending body is say, okay, this met our standards, or let's say it came in at a road that's level of service F, so to mitigate that, developer needs to do this, that, and the other thing. And yet you can say, well, regardless, you know, such and such a road isn't likely to be widened for 15 years, so you can make a decision whether that's what you want to do or not.
Developer enter into a contract with ACHD and say that they are gonna do your checklist of things? How do you get that enforced?
It's a bite.
Well, if I can, I mean, there are instances where we get large developments that come in, excuse me, Commissioner Visser, and that is that Gary and his team can limit the number of households. So they basically with, you know, let's say it's 3 or 4 phases, the current road conditions can handle 130 units. Before we'll allow any additional units, they have to make certain improvements to mitigate the impact of any additional growth within their development. And so we use that basically a phasing plan, if you will. One is the first is to a certain threshold, and then in order to get the additional improvements. But there's a difference in if you read the KMST decision, and that is there's a distinction between impact fees, which basically pay for more of a general impact of development within along a particular corridor, and then a specific development, we're able to exact additional improvements. And that's what we've done in a lot of these developments, and the level of service and why they come in and ask for variance. They're still paying an impact fee, trust me. But those additional improvements and specific improvements of impacts beyond what the general impact fee ordinance requires, then we can phase that in as the development grows.
So the developer agrees to that?
Yes, well, no, we condition,
Okay, if it's conditional, then how do you enforce it?
well, they have to come back in for the second phase of their development, and that plat will sit there until we're assured that those improvements are made.
So you can stop the second.
Well, we won't consider the application, but yes.
and then
So-
if there are things that are left undone, and sign a final plat only on them either doing those conditions or providing the money to get those conditions met.
Mhm.
Put a time frame on having those conditions that they must be satisfied, like widening the road, putting in a sidewalk, within a certain time frame?
What we have in certain instances, but we typically do it more towards the number of lots that they sell, because that is actually a number that's tied to the growth and the impact.
Like an example right now would be Cartwright Ranch, which is a planned community approved by the county. They could build so many lots, and then they had to stop until 36th Street is connected to Cartwright Road. That may take, who knows, 20 years. They can't build any more lots until that happens.
Same thing with the Syringa, that road that connects to Gowan, Orchard Street Extension that comes out to Maple Grove, that would go right through the development of Syringa. That has to be done in a certain time frame.
What the county commissioners have encountered at least twice already this year, is there was a 2-phase development. Phase 1 was put in, and it's off the roadway a ways. Phase 2 was initially either commercial or mixed development with some commercial plus maybe a few residential. And both of those instances, the developer sought to change phase 2 from that lower density 1 to problematic. They're not sticking to the original plan, and then we're overburdening the infrastructure by going to such higher density.
Sounds like that's in the hands of the county commission.
Part of that too is that, since that's is still in the Boise's area of impact, that if they want sewer, and Boise's comprehensive plan says we want higher density, Boise City is requiring them to request a variance on, or change in the zoning classification from R6 or RA to, I think one was an R20. But the applicant says, we're not gonna build to R20, we're gonna build to R12. But the only way we could get sewer is to agree with Boise City and increase the density to R20. So, I mean, it gets way too complicated.
So are you saying that Boise City, I thought you said this, Commissioner Case, that Boise City's gonna pull back their area?
That's the discussion they've been having with us.
And where would that go to?
We're talking about pulling it back to Victory and Hope.
But isn't, I mean, if someone's gonna modify the conditions of approval of the initial phase two, that's like a new application. They gotta do a traffic impact study, and we would treat it like a new application.
I'm sorry.
Madam President, can I get off of Southwest Boise just for a second? This is gonna sound like a stupid question. But
Okay, well then it depends.
Okay.
So it's no.
Now you know what my words.
That's right, notice that.
Modify the
Dave and
agenda
Rick move
to
away
add
from the
stupid
table.
question.
You know, with all the, the increase in the development of bike lanes, which, I'm not against bike lanes by any measure, but, and I know that a lot of the new streets and roads are being constructed now with bike lanes in them, and that's a good thing. There's also a lot of retrofitting in existing streets to create bike lanes. And usually that means that either lanes are gonna be lost or reduced in width, or a combination of both. Do you have a sense for, has that had any kind of an impact on congestion, especially in the more urban area of Boise City, downtown core, and the fringes of the downtown core? I'm starting to see it on the bench as well, but do you have a sense, is that causing any significant congestion by doing that? I mean, you're creating bike lanes, and that's safe for bike riders, but you're reducing lanes for cars. Do you?
I'm sure it does,
Yeah.
but I think what we're trying to do more and more is do it on low-stress networks. So,
Commissioner, if I could, again, from an operational perspective, the answer is no. The reason you're seeing more congestion is just more people here. The staff and all staff, city staffs, your staff, and ours, are very cognizant of the fact that the bicycle community, the pedestrian community needs to grow. We're providing safe routes for them, which is the right thing to do, but it has not come at the expense of delaying or narrowing dramatically road structures here so far.
Good.
I think it's where we have at-grade pedestrian crossings, it's an issue, if we're looking at State and Glenwood, for instance. If a pedestrian is gonna cross 10 lanes of traffic, that's gonna take, a minute and a half or whatever, that can create a pretty significant function if you're trying to turn left, right? You gotta wait for that. And so, I mean, in some areas, we're, that the pedestrian part of it is, well, we face that at Veterans and State, same thing there, So that's gonna have to continue to be something that we take a look at.
well, commissioners, getting close to the end of our time. I thought this was very productive and interesting. And I think we exchanged a lot of ideas.
Good
It
meeting.
was very
Yeah.
good.
And can I say one thing, Bruce?
Depends.
I love my street.
What is your street?
They rebuilt Camas Street between Orchard and
Oh,
Roosevelt, and
okay.
Grado Circle runs off of that. It's a work of art.
Okay. Yes, you may.
Thank you for the turnout today. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to have a Q&A with the audience. We're set in that, but please email.
Commissioner Visser.
Yeah, you can email me and I'll share it with the board. Concerns, questions, input, and because you're a valuable component of this process. So thank you again for being here, and we'd like to listen to what you have to say.
All right, then. Mr. Woods?
I just want to thank everybody as well for looking at the back of my head and Commissioner Tibbs for today. Appreciate y'all being here, and thanks to the commissioners for having this
Thank
meeting
you.
as well.
Very much.
So, with that, I will close the ACH portion of the meeting.
And I'll close the Ada County portion. Thank you all.
Thank you. That's our gift to you.
That's quite the panel.
Yeah, well, did you notice it also has a, yeah.
It moves well. I live just across the Emerald